Hello everyone, we are going to discuss the topic 5.4 constructing supply type or constructed response type. Another useful device for testing lower thinking skills is the supply type of test. Like the multiple choice test, the items in this kind of test consist of a stem and a blank where the students would write the correct answers. For example, the study of life and living organisms is called blank. Supply tests depend heavily on the way the stems are constructed. These tests allow for one and only one answer and hence often test only the students' recall of knowledge.
5.4.1 Completion type of test. It is, however, possible to construct supply type of test that will test a higher order thinking as the following example shows. Example, write an appropriate synonym for each of the following. Each blank corresponds to a letter. First example is metamorphose. The second example is flourished. The appropriate synonym for the first is change with 6 letters, while the appropriate synonym for the second is grow with 4 letters. Notice that these questions require not only mere recall of words, but also understanding of these words. Now, let's move in to another type of example. Another example of a completion type of test that measure higher order thinking skills is given below. First example is square root of 9. We all know that the square root of 9 is 3. Second example is the square root of 25. And we all know that the square root of 25 is 5. Now, how to create a grading rubric? First, define the purpose of the assignment or assessment for which you are creating a rubric. Second, decide what kind of rubric you will use, either a holistic rubric or analytic rubric. Third, define the criteria. Fourth, design the rating scale. Fifth, write descriptions for each level of the rating scale. And the last one, you can now create your own rubric. Now, I will give you the example of a rubric. So we have here 4 columns. The unacceptable, acceptable, target, and the exemplary. When we say exemplary, it is obviously the top or the peak of the scores you can give to your students. For example, 10 over 10. It means exemplary. The details are solid and firm. They all get the very target of the topic. So here how the exemplary column shows. It develops ideas cogently, organize them logically with paragraphs, and connects them with effective transitions. Now, that's for the logic and organization. They get exemplary for their logic and organization. How about the language? How can we give a rubric to language where if we are satisfied? So we're going to put them in the exemplary part. So here how it goes. Employs words with fluency. So the words was fluent and direct and just really smooth. It develops concise standards. That's also the point. It should be concise. Brief but concise. Now, one of the important and vital parts in giving a rubric is spelling and grammar. Spelling and grammar in exemplary, the writing is essential, error-free in terms of spelling and grammar, so that the audience will not confuse. Now, let's go for the development of ideas in exemplary. They should explore ideas vigorously, support points fully using a balance of subjective and objective evidence. For the last part, the purpose. How to get and exemplary points for purpose. The writer's decision about focus, organization, style, and content fully elucidate the purpose and keep the purpose at the center of the piece. So those are the example of how to make a good rubrics for your student. So I hope you understand it well. Thank you.
5.4.2 essays, classified as non-objective tests, allow for the assessment of higher-order thinking skills. Such tests require students to organize their thoughts on a subject matter in coherent sentences in order to inform an audience. In essays test, students are required to write one or more paragraphs on a specific topic. Essays questions can be used to measure attainment of a variety of objectives. Number 1. Comparing. In a compare and contrast essay, two subjects are analyzed by comparing, contrasting, or both. The goal of a comparison or contrast essay is to highlight subtle differences or unexpected parallels between two subjects rather than stating the obvious. Relating cause and effect, a cause and effect relationship in which one event causes the occurrence of another. The consequence must exist whenever the cause happens. There must not be anything else that can explain the cause and effect relationship. Number 3. Justifying. To justify in an essay implies to give reasoning and prove facts that support your point of view, as well as to state the opposing facts and fight against them. Number 4. Summarizing. Restate the main points of a piece of writing in your own words and briefly summarize the content. Number 5. Generalizing. State a set of principles that can explain the following events. Number 6. Inferring. In the light of the facts you presented, what is most likely to happen? Number 7. Classifying. What you will going to write here is what to do the following items or events have in common. Number 8. Applying. It requires logic and critical thinking on how would you solve the following problem situation. Number 9. Analyzing. Analyze, you should describe the reasoning errors in the following paragraphs. Number 10. Evaluating. You must find the strengths and weaknesses of the following paragraphs. Number 11. Creating. Make up a story describing what would happen if, or make up a story that can make your reader's imagination go beyond their expectations on what would really happen.
Guideline for the formulation of a completion type of test. The following guidelines can help you formulate a completion type of test. The fill-in-the-blank type. Number 1. Avoid over-mutilated sentences. Give enough clue to the student. Number 2. Avoid open-ended item. There should be only one acceptable answer. This item is open-ended, hence no good test item. Number 3. The blank should be at the end or near the end of the sentence. The question must first be asked before an answer is expected, like the matching type of test. The stem where the question is packed must be the first column. Number 4. Ask question on more significant item, not on trivial matter. Number 5. The length of the blanks must not suggest the answer, so better to make the blanks uniform in size.
Hi, I'm just Dadoy Emilio Jr. So, the topic is essay. So, an essay focused piece of writing of design to information the pursued. There are many different types of essay, but they are often defined in categories. So, I've discussed the restricted essay and non-restricted or extended essay. So, let's go first to restricted essay. The restricted essay addresses the limit simple of a curriculum or a learning outcomes. So the restricted essay response may commonly to known as problem solving exercise, focus on solving a problem and discussion making processes. So restricted essay response usually limits both the content of the response of restricting the scope of the topic of the discussion, useful of measuring learning outcomes. So requiring interpretation and application of the data in a specific area. So restricted response task in intended performance for narrowly defined, then unextended response tasks sometimes or question may begin like a multiple choice or a short answer stem, but then tasks for a explanation, or the task usually is explanation, justification, and etc. etc. So an assessment task restricted, it is a response if it is highly specific and generally contains only one correct answer. So example, the University of Delaware. So typically example might be a multiple choice or true or false or type of question. So more active styles of task would be emergency response. So indicated by words as less defined and give reason. So example, Mr. Roger, a grade 9 science teacher, wants to measure her student ability to interpret scientific data with a paper and pencil test. So you describe the steps or that Mr. Rogers would follow. Then after that, give reason to justify each step. So we go now to non-restricted or extended essay. An open-ended or essay question is one of where there are restriction on the response, including the amount of the allowed to finish, the number of page rating or material included. So extended response items have a traditionally been called essay question, and extended response items is an open-minded question to begin with some type of prompt. So these questions allow students to write to response that arrives at a conclusion, so based on their specific knowledge of the topic. So it's defined to the topic. So students are given sufficient freedom to demonstrate skill of evaluating and creating. So students are began. So example, the student is given a complete achievement test that include errors or flaws in the direction in the test item and in the arrangement of that item. So you write a critical evaluation to this test using a evaluate criteria, the rules and stands for test construction described in your own textbook. So include a detailed analysis of the test or strengths and weaknesses and the evaluation of the overall quality and probably effectiveness. Type of essay and question are restricted and response and intended response.
Now, thank you for watching and listening to our videos.
We hope you learned something.
Thank you,
Thank you.
and goodbye.